In this session, we're going to look at tips and strategies for answering the reading module of the academic IELTS test. So let's just begin by reminding you of what happens in the text. And of course, there is an overview video if you want more details on this. Anyway, there are 3 reading texts, and each text is about 1 to 2 pages in terms of its size. Most of the time 2 pages is probably an extra long one, and you can expect to read between 1.5, maybe less than that, 1 and something pages for reading. Most of the reading texts that you have to read, will be in the form of articles, maybe about general interest topics, but the topics may also be specific. And for each article, there will be about 14 questions. The questions are generally distributed equally over the 3 reading texts. So that means that you should spend pretty much equal time on each text. And then you've got 60 minutes to do the whole test and read all 3 texts, answer all questions. Okay, so when you begin the first text, there are some things that you need to do, and I'm going to show you 4 steps for answering the questions and conducting the reading test. Now, you need to remember that these 4 steps apply to each individual article. So you'd go through this step 3 times if you're in the full IELTS test. Let's look at step 1. So step 1 is the speed read for general understanding, and this should take about 2 or 3 minutes. Now, speed read here does mean speed read, so you just look at the text itself, you look at the headlines, you look at the diagrams, you look at any subheadings or paragraph headings or section headings, and just spend 2 or 3 minutes looking and speed reading to get a main idea of what the text is about. And that's the point. Basically, you just want an overall idea of the main topic, and you want some idea about how the text itself is structured. And then step number 2, you go to the questions. Of course, you're not reading for pleasure here. You're reading to show how many questions you can answer correctly. So step number 2, look directly at the questions and read those carefully. And then you need to make sure you know where the answers are located, because it is very important to only read in the specific area where you might find the answer. In general, the questions are chronological, so that means that the early questions will usually be found in an early part of the text, and the questions at the end will usually be found at the end of the text. A lot of the time, you only need to read 1 paragraph to get the correct answer. You don't need to read the whole text. And then step number 4, which of course is the longest part of your reading, and you should read carefully and get the answers there. So as you can see, that would bring you to about 20 minutes time on those, and 10 to 12 minutes is slightly less than 1 minute per question if there are about 14 questions. Now, time is often a problem with people who do the reading module. There's not enough time and too many questions is the basic problem. So let's just look at a few time-saving tips and strategies. So I've already mentioned this before, spend 20 minutes for each text. And it is important that you manage the time equally over the 3 texts. That is because the questions are spread equally. So the next tip is to read only where the answer is located. And as I said earlier, make sure, think to yourself, where can I find this answer? And then look only in that area. Look for keywords from the question. Often the keywords will tell you where you can find the answer. For example, if the question asks about Mr. Smith, then you can read the text and you can look for references to Mr. Smith in the text. And where the text refers to Mr. Smith, it is probably the likeliest place to find your answer. This might seem obvious, but it is worth repeating. Don't read the whole text again and again and again. You need to be active and think about where exactly you can find the answer. Okay, let's look at a few more general skills now. So here's a few things to remember. Firstly, in terms of the scoring, your target is to get about 30 correct answers. That will give you a band 7. If you want a band 6, it's something like 24, 25, maybe 26 correct answers. Now, in order to get in that above average range, you really need to be hitting 30 correct answers. So the good news here is that you do not have to get all of the questions correct. Linked to this, it is worth guessing tricky questions. This is because empty answers are wrong. You never get a point for empty answers, but also you don't get a penalty for any answers that are wrong. So you might as well guess something. Who knows? You might be correct. Or you might have some idea. If you have some idea of what the answer is, then why not just write it in? Follow the instructions. Now, again, this seems obvious, but it is a common problem. Sometimes candidates get the correct answer, but they do not follow the instructions, and therefore it is wrong. A typical example of this might be the yes, no, not given, or true, false, not given. For example, if the question tells you to write yes, no, not given, and then you write true, false, not given, even if your choice is correct, it's still going to be wrong because you did not follow the instructions. Number 4 is to check the grammar, because not only must the content be correct, but the grammar must be correct. And one of the points here in questions where the instructions are write no more than 2 words, write no more than 3 words, you need to be quite careful about how your answer fits. Remember that unlike the listening, where you have 10 minutes at the end to check things like grammar and spelling, in the reading you do not have any extra time. You only have those 60 minutes. So you need to check the grammar as you go through. And then another rather obvious but important point is to make sure you copy your answers accurately into the answer sheet. When you do the test, you have the 2 sheets. You have your question paper with the reading and texts and the questions on them, and then you have your answer sheet where you have to simply write the answers. So make sure you don't make any spelling mistakes, and you do not say write the answer to question number 5 in the box for question number 6, and those kind of stupid things which will lose you unnecessary points. So here's a few things about reading practice, because really at the end of the day, success in reading comes through reading, reading, and more reading. The more reading you do, the more confident you will be when you come to take the module. So here's a few ideas for you. Firstly, turn music and TV off. If you're going to read, then that's what you're going to read. Don't have background distractions and focus on your reading. I would say don't read for too long. Again, the magic number, 20 minutes is good enough for reading, and then you can take a break. Or if you're very busy, of course, you can stop. But once again, just keep it to short, focused, intense sessions rather than long sessions of 1 hour where you're concentrating on an on and off basis. Focused practice for a shorter time is much better than unfocused practice over a longer time. It is also a good idea to do practice IELTS reading tests, and really if you want to be test fit, then I would suggest 5 tests is a good number for preparation. Now, once again, you can purchase one of the practice IELTS test books, and you can get samples of reading tests in there to go through. Another good thing to do is to read for pleasure. In the second bullet point, really, I was thinking about reading for improving your English skills, but you can also read novels, magazines, newspapers, and topics that you are interested in. Reading in English, of course, will help you to improve your general reading skills, and of course, therefore help you to handle the test more effectively. Finally, use your vocabulary notebook, because when you're reading, you're going to come across new vocabulary. So this is an opportunity for you to capture and learn new vocabulary. So don't worry, just when you come across a new word, underline it, write it down in your vocabulary notebook. If you're not sure about the meaning of the word, you can check it later if you don't want to be distracted and you want to keep reading, or of course you can look up the word there and then and make further notes on the meaning and the use in your vocabulary notebook. But it is useful to remember that reading is a really good way to develop and expand your vocabulary. So be active on that front and try to capture as much new vocabulary as you can. There we have it. That is some tips and strategies for taking the reading test.